Hello Internet, and welcome to a new tutorial. As someone who has been diagnosed with a severe case of what's so-called gear acquisition syndrome, I always find something unique about each synthesizer I see, and this makes me want to buy it. Well, almost every synthesizer. And luckily, I guess, my wallet doesn't allow me to do so. So I tend to try and emulate these unique features I found in synthesizers in the gear that I already own. And this brings us to this moment when I saw the Moog DFAM for the first time, and I was like stunned by the fact that it can do these double kick and snare patches at the same time, and I was so jealous. Like, I've wanted to get a DFAM, but I couldn't get a DFAM. And my only semi-modular synthesizer, the Behringer Neutron, couldn't do these patches. By the way, if you don't know what the DFAM is, it's a semi-modular drum synthesizer from Moog. So anyways, I've decided to go on a quest, right? I've wanted to find a way to emulate these patches on the Neutron. And oh boy, what I found. It's like I've opened up a whole new dimension of psychedelic goodness with this synthesizer. And this brings us to today's tutorial. I really want to share with you, everything I've learned along the way and, show you this whole new psychedelic dimension of the Neutron. But I can't do it in one tutorial. So I've decided to separate it into 3 tutorials. Every tutorial will go a step further in the complexity of the patches till we reach at the end the famous kick and snare patch, but using the Neutron. But before arriving to that point, let's focus on today's tutorial, where we'll be creating this really deep and dark foresty atmosphere. But before we dive into this tutorial, if you'd like to support the channel, you can consider becoming one of my patrons, buy my presets on Gumroad, or just leave a like, comment, subscribe if you like comment like this. This helps the channel a lot. Now with that said, let's go to the desk and check what this patch is all about. So here we are in front of the Neutron, and the patch we're going to create today is a heavily modified version of what I like to call the Agile lead. If you don't know what the Agile lead is all about, I'll leave several links over here somewhere that'll tell you everything you need to know about it. But in a nutshell, it's a saw wave. Let's choose that. That goes into a bandpass filter. Let's take a bandpass filter, give it a lot of resonance, and this filter will be modulated with a sample and hold or any random modulator. You've heard this patch in countless of records. So as this is the base of our patch, let's create it. So what I'm going to do, I'll first off bypass the overdrive circuit of the Neutron. I really don't want it for this patch, so the VCF will go to the VCA directly because the overdrive is basically in between the VCA and the filter. Next, I'm going to route the sample and hold to modulate the filter of the Neutron. So basically take the sample and hold out, and it's going to modulate the frequency mod in here. And I want to clock the sample and hold to the notes coming from Bitwig or Ableton or your DAW, basically. So what I'm going to do, I'll take the MIDI gate in here and I'll route it to the sample and hold clock. So now every time the Neutron will receive a new MIDI note, the sample and hold is going to fire a new random value. So now if I'll send a really simple ARP, we will get this. Let's give it some mod depth in here. Now we have this. Let's take the oscillator a little bit down. We don't really need to be in tune by now. See what kind of patches I'm talking about, right? So now let's make it a little bit more interesting by modulating the pitch of the first oscillator with the LFO. So what I'm going to do, I'll take the LFO unipolar out and I'll send it to the attenuator. So the attenuator will act as a dry and wet knob, right? So with it, we can choose how much modulation is being sent from the LFO to the oscillator pitch. So I'll take the attenuator out to the first oscillator like this, and I'll set the LFO to triangle, and I'll set it to something low like this. And now we have this kind of modulation. And we can actually go really wild with it when we will turn the first attenuator almost all the way up. Check this out. Pretty interesting. Let's take the tuning a little bit down, and now we have this. Okay, now that's pretty interesting, but we're still not getting into the double patch configuration I was talking about in the intro. So to do so, we're going to introduce the second oscillator. Now what I'm going to do in here, I'll set the second oscillator in here to a sine wave. I'll set the mix all the way to the second oscillator, right? So now we basically have this. And what I want to do, I want to modulate the pitch of the second oscillator. But how we're going to do it, we'll use the sample and hold basically. But since the sample and hold is already modulating the filter, what we're going to do, we need to multiply the signal by 2. And luckily we have the mult circuit in here that will do just so for us. So I'll take the sample and hold out in here. I'll set this one that goes to the filter right in the first mult. The sample and hold out will go to the mult input basically, and the second multiplier will go directly to the second oscillator's pitch. Now you can send it to the second attenuator and from the second attenuator to the second oscillator, but to be honest, I like it when the modulation is all the way up for the second oscillator. So now we have this. Let me set this filter to basically a low pass, and I won't modulate it, so we can just hear the modulation going on. So now we have this basically. Okay, pretty interesting, but now let's set it back to bandpass in here. Let's blend between both oscillators and check what we have. Let's get back the filter modulation the way it was. Now let's blend the second oscillator. Now, to make things more interesting, the ARP sequence I'm sending to the Neutron actually has velocity modulation going in it. So what we can do in here, with the assign output, we can use the velocity as a modulation source, right? So what I'm going to do with it, I'm going to send from the assign output to the attenuator 1 CV input. So now with the velocity, we're going to modulate basically the first attenuator knob in here, right? And to make sure that the assign output is sending velocity, what we will do, we'll click on oscillator sync in here and see the LFO shape basically determines what the assign output is sending. When it's on ramp down in here, this means that the assign output is sending velocity. And if you want to change it, you can do so with the range button, just like so. So let's keep it on ramp down, hit oscillator sync back, and now we know that there's velocity from the assign output modulating the attenuator 1 CV. And now we have this. Pretty interesting. Now let's give it a 1/16th straight delay. And with the kick and bass, we will get this. pretty psychedelic. And this is all what this first patch is all about. And it just shows the beauty of what we can do with the Neutron in double patch mode. And yeah, with this is the end of this tutorial. I really hope you've liked it. I really hope you've learned something new. See you next time.